how do we reach and teach preschoolers with digital books? So I'll dive in real quickly and give you an overview of Sesame Workshop, what we do, our mission and our model, which maybe many of you don't know the whole grasp of it. We are a nonprofit organization. Our projects bring critical lessons in literacy, numeracy, emotional well-being, health and wellness, respect and understanding to children in 150 plus countries. Our model, as you see the three circles, research goes into everything that's developed and has been since day one. It's 43 years strong and looking forward to many more. I will dive into the research as we go along. We target children ages 2 to 6. It was founded obviously in 1968 using TV as the primary platform, but as you can tell, we are, as well as everyone else, merging into other realms. Our current Sesame Street broadcasts in 150 countries and territories. So I'm not in publishing, but I can give you a brief overview, however, of our content. In addition to the US and Canada, we have 23 million units per year. Print books are published in 50 countries, 60 plus publishers worldwide. Our core print formats are coloring and activity books, storybooks, board books, novelty books, and workbooks. As we see, our digital content is growing. We reach over 55 million children and adults through our core platforms: TV, computer, gaming, mobile, podcasts, downloads, and audio. Our consumer digital content experience have increased almost 30% since January of last year. Specifically, let's talk about our ebooks and apps. They are becoming our key content formats. We have an ebook store, subscription-based website, an app with over 160 ebooks. We have 40 standalone ebooks for e-reader devices, and 41 apps, paid and free, for handheld touch devices, so everything from iOS to Windows and Symbian. Best-selling iOS book apps, the monster at the end of the book, and another monster at the end of this book, are based on our print books that have been around for a long time. Both have been #1 in the book app category for both iPad and iPhone, and are regular fixtures in the top 20. I believe another monster has, the sequel to Monster, hasn't left the top 5, but I didn't check the ratings this week, so I could be off, but definitely the top 10. So you saw, obviously, the app, but what do we hope for this experience to be like for a child and for their parents? So let me play this. What'd you do, Ren? What did you do? Emily did it too. Again? We want kids to be engrossed and engaged in it, as well as create an intergenerational play where parents are wanting to experience this together. So what do we do with our formative digital research? As we said earlier, it's a 43-year-long research experience. Obviously, it started with television. We're testing to see how are kids engaged, what keeps kids throughout the experience. But then now we're moving into how does our research impact our content for digital. So we've had more than 27 specific studies for touch devices. Our digital studies are even larger than that with our web content. So we have focus groups, we have online surveys, we have in-home studies, which you just saw that, and you'll also see some other footage of that. In-school studies, and we do this weekly. We are constantly going out and testing to make sure kids not only like it, but also are learning from it, because that's obviously our core objective. So we have a three-pronged approach. We want comprehension. We want them to learn. We want them to remember. We have an appeal. We want them to like it. And then we have usability, which I'll specifically address what we look for under each of these. So what do we want to learn? Is the app or ebook easy to use? It must address both parent and child expectations and concerns. There are particular things that kids will naturally do with an app or an ebook, and parents have expectations of what they want out of it. And that makes absolutely a critical component for anything that we develop. And then what kind of user interface designs are most intuitive for the majority of users? So what you saw in Monster at the end of this book wasn't how it originally started. We had different features like the parent tips that we provide was actually initially an icon at the top right-hand corner, but then parents weren't ever going there. So we ended up putting it in a different section. But all of that we wouldn't have known had we not tested it multiple times. Comprehension. What does a child understand? Does a child remember anything from it? What features and user interface design increase a child's understanding of the app and their learning goals? What distracts from it? That's a very big question as well. With appeal, does the user enjoy it? Because if they don't enjoy it, they're not going to come back to it. And which features are most popular and engaging? And will they recommend it to others? What do parents say and think and want? And what will they say about it based on how we design it? So let's just dive into some of our lessons learned. Make it easy to use. Easy access to all key features at all times is essential. It shouldn't be more than 1 or 2 taps away. If you bury something, there's no way that parents are going to find it or kids are going to find it. Do not overcomplicate actions, which I will show you something in a minute. And interruptibility, even in the middle of a story or a specific piece of dialogue, is important, unless the interruptibility prevents comprehension. So, for example, we have it based in our book apps that it will read through the entire text before the interactivity comes live, because we want a child to focus on what the content is, the print content, the thing that makes it so strong. And then they can go and play with all the bells and whistles and added features. And it actually works better in the flow, because if any of you have watched a child or have children that play on a touch device, they just initially start tapping all over the place. So giving them a little bit of structure is much better. So this video will show you our Elmo Loves ABCs app. We had initially created it to where we have this border around. You touch the letter, and then you go to activities that are just really deep, enriching dive into that content. Well, we realized that kids rest their hands along the side, along the bottom, so we called it bumping. Really sophisticated, I know. But they would touch it, and then they bump to another thing, and they could never complete an entire activity. So we went back to the design team. The design team's, okay, what are we going to do? And they created this touch with intent, is what it called. So you had to press and hold for like a 1 second maybe, or not even that much, but still. It created some difficulties, as you'll see.
His finger looks like it's okay. It's a little red, but I think it's okay. Ashton. It's just a little red, but I think it'll be okay.
I'm gonna say no. You there. Me. Okay, I'm getting my child. Just press it. Yeah, this is my friend.
You have to hold it down. So just press it and hold. Put your finger on it and hold. 1, 2, there you go. We also, if you notice that the tracing in of the letters, one thing we found from testing is that kids don't fill it all in, usually. And if you have a very stringent requirement in order to advance the game and filling the tracing in, you have to have a little bit forgiving, because they're just doing this and they're not tracing normally like we would. But had we not tested it, we wouldn't have known, because kids were getting frustrated because they felt like they had colored the entire letter in. Something to think about. So our usability, again, put the user in control at all times. easy navigation forward and backward. So within the ebooks, especially when we first started testing Monster, and I think when it initially launched, we didn't have a forward and page back option. It was only going forward because we wanted to keep them going forward, and also because there's a lot of digital assets in that, and it takes a while to load, and so it was just too much. But having tested it multiple times as well as talked with parents, they found it absolutely essential that we had the options to move back and forth. Skip introductions. Having that capability is imperative for parents, especially for children, because they don't want to hear it. But if you do have introductions and or like examples of how something works, make it really quick and make it visual. No audio for preschoolers. Well, have audio, but have it with a visual. And then turn off the extras. Parents want the ability to turn off the other bells and whistles. They want a parent mode and they want a child mode. They want this flexibility. Make it fast. And as I mentioned earlier, make the assets load as quickly as possible. You'll lose the child. If they think something's spinning and they don't see anything loading, they think it's broken and they leave, which is not good. So make it visual, like I said. Make all gameplay items that are touchable very clear and obvious, and all hotspots large. I will address a little bit later, but you know kids have very limited dexterity. So if you only have one very small hotspot on that screen, they will probably not be able to fully control it at all. Use highlighting liberally to direct users to interactive areas. And then combine audio prompts, like I said, with visual reinforcement. So that way kids hear something and then they also see it. And then also using that later on if there's not any activity on screen, like a timeout that comes on and you hear the audio again, but you also see a little flash. If you remember from the Monster, there's the not page. And at the initial start of it, kids didn't know where to touch. And if you saw, you have to touch the 3 knots in order to get past Grover's barrier. And kids had no idea how to do that. And so having to make a very visual prompt as well as timeouts that come later on. Make it flexible. Provide more than one way to interact. We found with Monster, for example, that kids knew how to swipe, but some only just thought it was tapping. And we didn't have an arrow at the time. So the page curl, as you saw, kids didn't know that they could do both. So we have now adjusted everything to where it will recognize both touch inputs. And enable customization. So if you saw at the initial start of Monster, I could put my name in. We have some now that have voice recognition. You can record your own story, or your mom can record the story and you hear it in her voice. It's another really wonderful feature, especially for preschoolers, and to create this engaging book experience. And then with usability, remember our target audience. We typically promote designing in landscape view because for little preschoolers, holding in vertical like this and then trying to manipulate on the screen becomes very, very challenging, and it's more natural for them to grip in a landscape view. We obviously, I said earlier, position icons away from the bottom and from the sides because we have the bumping problem, and we don't want them to miss out on a quality experience because of that. Choose easy-to-use icons. We call it our iconography. We ask parents, we ask kids, what do you think you would find here? We can even paper test before we go out and actually create an app. So if you have an icon that's the parent or the home button, and we have tested all sorts of different types, and kids don't know what they would find under that, what their expectation is, or parents, they're not going to go there, or they're going to get confused, and we don't want to lose them. It has to be simplified. With gameplay and activities designed for their little fingers, and still very fine developing motor skills, so making hotspots larger and being clear on what they can do. For example, the tracing, being able to trace or drag something, and they will pick up their finger. If you have an activity going from point A to point B on the screen, they pick up their finger as they go along, and it needs to account for the fact that you can't, it doesn't need to start them all back over again, that they can stop in midway and then do it again. So it's taking into consideration those very fine, limited dexterity issues. So with this video, you're going to see specifically making sure that we have clear functionality for, or not introducing something that is slightly challenging for a child that they don't quite understand. She has 2 iPads because her cousin left, so she got to manhandle both. So. I just want it was kind of floppy, like she didn't know whether she could touch the screen because it looked like a laptop, but it wasn't quite angled enough. So she was.
Oh yeah, grab that triangle. That's good. Here, I'll show you. If you do you want to go to the crayon? Okay, that's kind of hard, huh? You want to go to the crayon or this one?
So it took a while, and as we all within Sesame had problems with the slider. So making, again, that hotspot larger, but also introducing the slider functionality was slightly odd for a child. So they expect a tap, and making it to where they have to require them to slide down and snap into a particular location was very, very challenging. So we've had to modify since then. With our comprehension, make it easy to use and show, don't tell. Minimize the talking and maximize the visual highlights around icons, pictures, and other hotspots. Include demos of core functionality and navigation and make that easy to turn on and off. Highlight read-along text. That's a huge thing from parents, is that they want it highlighted. They want that option, but they also want the option to turn the highlight off. They want everything, but it's probably better to err on having the highlights available. Keep focus on the learning objective. So we need to keep our visual and audio bells and whistles to a minimum, enough to engage, but not enough to distract. Lock in the narration and lock out the interactivity for the first read. I had mentioned this. So you see the narration go through, and then the child's able to do whatever you have available to them on screen. And then relate the interactivity or game directly to the storyline and or learning goal. And we know this from television testing. We know this from everything else. If the interactivity on screen, whether TV or on your touch device, is not related to the content, then kids are going to remember that and forget what the educational message is. We could tell you many a funny story if you, for example, Cookie Monster, thinking the moon is made of cookies, but he's actually trying to teach about the substance of the moon. But then, this is from television study from years ago, but then the kids walk away thinking, when we ask them, what's the moon made of? And even though Cookie's gone into this long elaboration and everyone else, we have Buzz on there talking that it's made of what the substance of the moon, but kids walk away thinking, oh, the moon's a cookie. So we have to realize that when you create this fun visual, that it needs to be related to the actual educational content. Repeat the interactive hints. So remind children of the available options. Highlight interactive hotspots or or gameplay options more than once. We especially have like timeouts. So if a kid's not doing anything or touching, we assume that they might be confused or they don't know what's available. So we have a subtle little flash here or there or something, and a little audio prompt that says, basically, touch me now. Less is more. Audio instruction should be short and precise. Avoid the multi-step actions. For example, you saw the double tapping or something like that is confusing. If you do require a multi-step process, especially for preschoolers, explain it very clearly and probably in some sort of tutorial. Don't linger on one activity indefinitely. You move from one round to the other smoothly. We top out at 5 gameplays, but we typically are around 3. And then for the errorless learning, provide a context. Introduce concepts before asking users to use them. And then reinforce the learning in a fun, game-like way to build confidence and knowledge simultaneously. So we don't let a child fail. We will eventually give away what the answer is. So we don't turn the page for them necessarily, but we do basically make it as plain as simple as, hey, you touch right here, or this is the right answer after they've gotten it wrong for a period of time. We want to make a child feel empowered by it, not feel like they're getting it wrong and wrong and wrong, and then they don't feel smart. With comprehension, we want to be clear, we want to be creative, and we want to be catchy. If information is clear and repeated creatively and interactive, children are more likely to, 1, return to the ebook, and which also increases significant learning objectives, I mean, one time through an ebook might not really have much educational gain in it all, but if you keep a child coming back and enticing them to return to a book, whether it's a print book or whether it's on a touch device, it obviously shoots up your opportunity of a child learning from it. Include audio or visual rewards for successful completion of activities. Make it fun, encourage replayability, and it also increases their proficiency. So with appeal, many studies have shown that our appeal of apps and ebooks increases for parents and children with the following: the ease of use, especially the one-step menu or index, customization of settings, being able to make choices about what their child sees, what the parent interacts with, age-appropriate content, so making it very specific. Hard to find cross-sell or promotional material. We try to, this is a fine line. I don't know how many of you have had a child who goes in and accidentally buys multiple things on an app through their, it's happened to some of our people here at Sesame. Their child goes in and has, I don't know, it was one of the apps that you could buy extra things for your characters, and before they knew it, she had a $100, $200 bill racked up, and not a very happy camper. So we try to make it obviously parent-facing and not child-facing. We bury it in a way that children are not able to just go straight in and buy from it. And parents don't want that, just because they want to know what's available, but they don't want it an option for their child. To be able to choose to switch on and off the interactivity is another major point. Sometimes parents just want a book. They don't want bells and whistles. They just want a book. Sometimes they've mentioned that for before bedtime. They don't want it to where they want their child to be able to read the book on their iPad, but they don't want their child to be able to interact with it and get them all geared up. If you have top-notch storytelling and animation, it's going to keep a family happy, especially if the special effects are related specifically to the topics. And then narration, particularly the character voice, we know they love those characters. And with Grover, for example, we've had many children. Grover, at one point, if you heard him say, "Oh, you're so strong," when you broke down the brick wall, we have kids from our in-home study will turn to their parents and say, "Grover told me I was strong." Or then we have them a little bit later, and he's begging them, "Please, please, please, don't turn the page." And kids will just sit there. And then their mom will be like, "Why aren't you turning the page?" And they go, "Grover doesn't want me to turn the page." So just sucking them in with this fun narration and character, it makes it so much more appealing. And then studies have shown that hands-on activities, coloring pages, puzzles, games that reinforce the educational message make the experience much more enticing. Highlighted words, like we said earlier, and other educational features like definitions. So in some of our apps and ebooks that we're coming out with, being able to touch the word, then it pops up with this little word tool, and you hear a character voice tell you what the definition of that word is. That's a really fun way to have it. Layered learning. So the initial introduction to a game within an ebook is what we call scaffolded. So it starts at the baseline, and if as a child progresses, it gets a little bit more challenging and a little bit more challenging. So that way they always feel like there's a leveling up, if you will, that they're coming back and they're getting something a little bit different than the last time. And then short, specific, integrated, child-friendly parent tips. So we have tested our parent tips multiple times, and I don't know if I didn't show this component, but we have specific tips. So obviously with Monster, we're addressing children's fears. So there's tips in there about how parents can engage with their child around specific fears that they might have, whether it's a monster under the bed or in the closet or going to the dentist. We have little quick tips. And so how to make those ways to extend the storybook experience and giving parents the content to talk about these things, giving them specific things to ask a child to extend it. Parents love having that available. If they use it, we don't know, but they at least have it available to them. And that is my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Do you notice any differences across languages and cultures as you went through this process?
Like in their use of, the availability of touch devices. within the homes is probably your first start. So we test in low-income areas often because we specifically look more socioeconomic status range because within the ethnicities there's not as much, but whether the availability is there to have these devices is what's our primary concern. And so, for example, in a low-income family, a child may not have ever experienced an iPad, and let alone an ebook. So we want to make our things so intuitive that they go into these kids that had never ever had touched one of these and that they can play it with complete ease. So in that sense, that's what we try to shoot for, but we don't specifically look across ethnicities. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.